Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from Kansas Soybean Commission. The soybean checkoff. It works for everyone.
I keep reading about engineered corn, but I don't know what that means.
Spring water, purified water, what's the difference?
Is imported beef safe for my family?
Consumers want to know the facts about the products they buy. That's where Real Ag comes in. From plant to plant and from pasture to plate, Kyle Bauer and the Real Ag crew find the facts to help you sort the truth and help you understand Real Ag. Now here's your host, Kyle Bauer.
Once a vehicle, farm equipment, and companion, the role of the horse continues to evolve into the modern times. Horses are our topic today on Real Ag. Whether for racing, working, or other purposes, horses need to be trained. A horse that is safe to be around is called a broke horse. Breaking a horse causes no physical harm to the animal. Modern techniques are humane and safe.
I try to sell 5 or 6 horses a year, most of them through here. Some I sell at home, but kind of buy green horses and stuff that people's had a problem with and take them and ride them a year or so and just kind of break them, get them where the general public can ride them. The money's really good on a good broke horse. It's just there's becoming less and less people that can ride them and spend the time to make them. I mean, it takes 5 or 6 years to make a really good one.
A halter horse is a horse raised for show. They're raised to be beautiful and appealing. A cutting horse is a horse bred for a rodeo event that involves separating a calf from the herd. They're bred and trained for agility and for instinct.
They'll have like a 2-minute time period and they'll take a calf from the herd and hold it and keep it from going back to the herd. So, you know, I mean, it's something that we've always done on the ranch is, you know, for 100 years and now they get paid big bucks to do it in the public.
A roping horse is a horse bred to be steady enough and fast enough for a cowboy to be able to rope a calf at a full run. This is a rodeo event, but it's also useful in ranches when cattle need to be separated from the herd for medical purposes.
Right now, roping horses, and they always will. A good broke rope horse is always going to be worth something. If he's broke and quiet, and you know, you can go to jackpots on him, and anybody can ride him.
A race horse is as simple as that. A horse bred and trained for speed.
An equine athlete, we want them to look almost like a halter horse, but in conditioning, hair-wise and muscle tone and so forth and so on. But we also, you know, they're so much different than a halter horse. I mean, they're a lot speedier and stuff, and we still want them to look like an equine athlete. The quarter horse racing industry, we race from 200 yards, and then the ultimate Kentucky Derby type situations, All-American Futurity at Ruidoso, New Mexico, and it's a 440, a quarter of a mile.
A draft horse is bred and trained to pull carts, farm equipment, or other heavy things. Saddle horses or ranch horses are bred and trained to be versatile and durable. They transport the cowboy around the ranch in all kinds of weather and may be asked to be a draft, rope, or cutting horse from time to time.
These rope horses and ranch geldings and stuff, you know, they're quick of foot and you know, their muscle reflex, their quick muscle reflex, as opposed to, I mean, they're like sprinters and long distance runners, you know. So it's not undifferent than a human athlete. We condition horses for racehorse sales and cutting horse sales, and we'll present horses throughout the nation for about 9 months out of the year. And each individual is different depending on, you know, their structure, just like us. You know, it's no different than human athletes, and we condition and put them in a program that's conducive to each individual. Like some of us were blessed with athletic ability, and some of us weren't, but there's a niche for you somewhere in life, so it's not any different in a horse. Well, the trend has changed too, but the cutting horse futurities are 3-year-olds. The racehorse futurities are 2-year-olds, and I'm not sure that's always good, but that's where the money structure is, you know, for your return of your care through the years, your breeding fees, and so forth and so on. So in the ranch horse deal and the rope horse deal, we used to be able to sell 3- and 4-year-old, quote, prospects, and now they want the 7- or 8-, 9-year-old, 10-year-old even, that's been there and done it and more proven in that area than a, quote, prospect.
Horses are constantly being bought and sold in the U.S., sometimes even in large auctions. However, almost all horses are sold individually, giving the buyer a chance to inspect the animal.
Very seldom do I look at a pedigree before I look at the individual. Start from the ground up, and if you don't have a good foundation on the ground, foot, legs, correctness, so forth and so on, then, you know, whatever body structure you have above, you know, will curtail, you know, how good you're going to get along, you know, from that point on. And you know, they've got to be very, very correct. We like one that moves fluidly, and no matter if it's in a ranch horse, a head horse, heel horse, calf horse, or a race horse.
Conformation is how much muscle they have in their back legs, how good their back legs are, a straight top. I like pencil-necked horses, which are nice, sleek necks that come out with a pretty head has to be on there. Actually, on this trip, I'm looking for colored horses, palominos, buckskins, duns, something of that, grays. They sell better. You got to have the conformation, but if you got a good bay horse and a good buckskin horse that are exactly like, the buckskin will sell before the other one. People sort of get a preference or get a trend started depending on what horse might be winning at a certain area, might determine some color. I think a judge will, his attention will go to color before it goes to a bay or a sorrel, or, you know, something like that. You know, anything catch the judge's eye and to get him looking at your horse, and that's what it takes.
Color, breeding, age, kind of what it can do. I try not to buy anything that bucks or bronchi anymore. The people don't like that, and they're harder to sell. And even if I can ride them for a year and get along with them, if somebody takes them home and turns them out and doesn't ride them, you know, it might come back. So just try to stay clear away from that.
Depends on what the people are looking for. On a real young horse, a lot of times 60 days. If they're an experienced rider, they may want to go on and do it themselves. Depending on the quality of the horse, a real top quality horse will put more time on because we can increase the value so much more. I like the quiet ones because of if they're quiet, you got a lot wider range of people that can buy the horse. You know, if they might be looking for a horse for their kid or a 4-H project or something like that. You get into the performance horses, you can have a little more fire to them. Normally those riders are used to it, and they're looking for something that's got some extra speed or extra muscle and want them just a little bit tighter. I do make a business out of it. It's not my primary business. I farm for a living and raise hogs and cattle, and then the horses are a sideline. Something that you could go to the ranch and work with, but you could also take the show ring and be presentable there too, and competitive. I like young horses, anywhere from yearlings to 3-4-year-olds. Unless I'd be looking for a brood mare. Age doesn't bother me a lot on a brood mare, but something I'm going to resell or a performance horse, I want a younger horse, something we can do something with and get them before they got too many problems.
We'll be honored this fall for 50 years of registering quarter horses. I've registered a little over 1,700. It's kind of been a full-time business, but with help from the family and my wife and some loyal employees over the years, why it's made it possible for me to manage the grain business and this horse operation. My goal has always been to breed a horse with a good disposition and good looking, but can ride. A horse that'll stay sound and have a sound mind, and anatomy is correct, so that if it takes so many years to make a good horse. And if you have a horse like you want him by the time he's 8 or 10 years old, and it takes that long, then you want him to last you that long again. And a lot of the horses being bred now are not that kind. They don't have the anatomy to stand using, and they'll cripple. I want horses that like people, horses that kids can get along with. You know, a quarter horse is supposed to you're supposed to be able to run him or rope on him, use him on the ranch, anything to earn his keep, and the kids are supposed to be able to ride him. And to do that, you've got to have a good disposition, and it's predictable what their disposition will be like from the past. You know, we're raising colts now. It's out of the 7th generation of mares from the old mare that we started with. And she was foaled in the 40s sometime, I don't remember what year, but she was a good one, and we just kept breeding her daughters and granddaughters and great-granddaughters, and she shows up in the pedigree of about all of our mares, and they're still the best horses.
The role of the horse has changed. With the advent of farm tractors and all-terrain vehicles, horses are now primarily used more for recreation than ever before.
In many ways, horses are companion animals. We certainly run into that as equine practitioners. They are often not produced for the same uses as some of our agricultural animals, and so they do become a part of the family. Even if they are used for something like race or show, they're still a valued member of that environment. Somebody that owns horses, again, be it the racing industry or be it for show purposes, Western performance, those horses oftentimes are considered more of a companion animal than they are of just general livestock. And that's how people handle them. When they are finished with their performance career, maybe they'll be used for breeding purposes, but oftentimes, when possible, people like to retire them, have them in a pasture, and then have younger horses that they're working with as far as performance.
Here lately, it's kind of been just more because I like doing it. Horse market's been a little poor, so it hasn't been that great, but I ride some outside horses too, but I like selling them. I like coming to sales, and so it's not been the greatest here lately, but it'll get better. There's getting to be fewer and fewer truly broke horses anymore. I mean, there's just less and less people that ride them as hard at ranch. You know, a lot of people have gone to four-wheelers, and just there's not as many horses that get rode hard anymore. For this sale, it's mostly ranching and roping horses. I mean, that's what people come here to buy, is something they can go to town or even go home and go play on. A lot of people like to just go rope. You know, they don't compete, but they just go play and rope, and there's a lot of these horses people go compete on. I mean, they sell a lot of good horses here that people go compete on.
Everybody wants a horse. Everybody wants to be a cowboy. It's just simple as that. I mean, we have ranchers, we have professional ropers here, we have barrel racers here, but people just like horses. People like horses. It's something to own a horse, have a few acres, have a horse, go ride their own horse, go check their cows. It's better if they come and visit with Kyle or I about horses, so they don't get into something that's maybe ahead of what they need, so they can buy the type of horse that they want and they need, and that at the level that they need, not something that is above what they need.
I mean, we get a daily fee in our business. People think, you know, if you get $25, $30 a day to keep a horse, you're making a tremendous amount of money. You know, with the cost of hay, the cost of shavings, the cost of help, the cost of insurance, and so forth and so on, the net money that you get is very minimal for the effort that you put out.
I've been riding her for like 2 weeks, roping, and like I'm learning to rope on her. And she's really fast and she's really fun to ride. I like her. It just depends. Like, a lot of kids start on ponies. I started on a Shetland pony when I was really little, and if it just depends, like a lot of ponies people think are really cute and want to have them as like little pets. And for her, she'd be a good like younger kid, like if they wanted to learn to rope on her. For a kid that wanted to do like barrels and pulls or something, she'd be good for that. The reason we have her is because we traded her for another horse. Like we sold a horse to the people that had her because their daughter needed a step up. Like she got a horse. She actually got my old horse. And so they didn't have any use for this pony anymore, so we took it. And we rode her, and after we rode her for a little bit, we realized like she's really good. Like she could change leads and she stopped really well. So we realized that she's pretty good. I don't know, I've just always ridden since I was like 5 or 6. And I never realized how much I liked it until I went away to college and didn't ride for like 8 months. And I came home and I just wanted to ride every day. And it's just really fun because you can go really fast, or you can, I like to go out and trail ride through like pastures and everywhere. And I just think it's really cool to just go all over and see a lot of things.
A horse is a living creature with specific needs. A horse owner has certain responsibilities to the animal.
Currently, we have various organizations in this country. Probably the most well-known is one called the Unwanted Horse Coalition. There are equine practitioners, there are equine producers that are involved with the Unwanted Horse Coalition. And this is a group where we try to identify perhaps reworking horses so that maybe they can have an alternative use, identifying horses that are at risk for going through public auction, and really trying to inform the public about responsible horse ownership so that we can best use the horses that we have. Responsible horse ownership, I would refer to that and the equine community, along with the AAEP, the American Association of Equine Practitioners. That would mean that we are providing the basic needs for horses, meaning food, shelter, water, appropriate preventative health practices. On average in this country, it's going to run about $3,200 annually to maintain a horse. And so sometimes that is a factor that people consider when making the decision to own horses, and that's something that people should consider when they're making that decision to purchase or to adopt a horse. I think the biggest problem that we run into is the fact that we do have too many horses. I guess the other issue is responsible breeding, so that we need to have people have horses that they reproduce for an intended purpose, not just randomly having a mare that maybe she isn't useful for anything, but they decide, I'm going to breed her and see what I get. And unfortunately, that is a situation where we can have horses that are produced that don't have an intended purpose. We do end up with a surplus. Organizations that are very responsible in terms of equine reproduction are things like the thoroughbred organizations, where they keep very tight records of the number of horses. It's all natural breeding, and they've really come down in terms of the numbers of horses that are produced in this country annually. A few years ago it was up to 40,000 annually. The expectations are right now it's about 20 to 30,000 annually. So that's part of that responsible ownership. Well, depending on the discipline, honestly, horses can have a pretty useful, even performance career up until their late teens and sometimes even early 20s. And so it's usually the very elite horses that maybe are not going to work at that level for that length of time. But that goes back to the issue of trying to identify what the horses can do, perhaps retraining them, finding alternative uses for them, and either selling or looking through adoption options for people that are looking to get into horse ownership and just kind of continue the longevity of that horse, because they can be useful for really into their 20s.
Like all animals, an old horse becomes weak and sickly. Often their teeth fall out and their bones become brittle. This leaves the owner with a decision to make.
Their options at this point would be to euthanize the horse, to humanely euthanize the horse. or in some settings to send the horse through public auction. Horses that go through public auction may then be transported either to Mexico or to Canada, where horse processing does take place. On average, horses live to be in their mid-20s, some up to 30, but that's getting pretty old. But we have had a shift in this country where we have more older horses, more geriatric horses that are living longer lives, longer, healthier, productive lives because of things like incredible nutrition. There are a lot of feed companies out there that have really researched how to maintain these horses for longer periods of time, better dental care, better preventative health, and so horses are living longer.
Processing refers to the slaughter of an animal for human consumption. There are currently no processing facilities in the United States.
With the situations changing, and certainly don't want to get in or debate the slaughter of horses, and you know, we've taken the killer horses out, and in my opinion, you know, it has affected the value of the entire industry, because, you know, now there's no bottom, the middle has went to the bottom, and then there's a top end. And that top end, I mean, you can go from a range, in these rope horses, even you'll go to a range of 1,500 to 10,000, you know. So in the racehorse deal, no different, you know. I mean, they'll give 300,000 or 400,000 for a racehorse prospect yearling, and but there's lots of those horses that bring, you know, 10, 15, 20,000 that are just as competitive. And what we end up doing in the harvesting of those lower end horses, and I'm not here to judge anybody's given horse, but what happens is those lower ends, they reproduce also. Well, so the entire industry is diluted, you know, with that bottom end soaking up through the deal, and you know, people say it's inhumane to kill a horse. It's pretty inhumane if you'll drive around the country now and see all the thin horses and the horses that people can't take care of and don't take care of.
Horse processing in the most strict terms would be the processing of horses for meat production, and that meat may be used for different purposes, but in some countries, in some cultures, such as European countries or Japan, sometimes even for human consumption. Currently, we do not have any horse processing that takes place in the United States. Up until 2007, we did have processing plants in the United States where we did have processing of horse meat. There were some changes in some laws in this country that have changed the way that we handle horses, and so we currently do not have any processing plants for horse meat in this country. Horses that might be used for processing would be horses often that go through public auction. In this country, we currently do have a surplus of horses. On average, at least 100,000 surplus horses annually. And so oftentimes these are horses that may not be useful for performance purposes, and so they may fit into a category of what we refer to as the unwanted horse. And so those horses may go through public auction and end up being processed. Historically, in this country, horses have been processed and usually these are going to be horses that no longer have a performance productive career. And so they have been sent through processing plants for the production of meat, and that meat maybe would be used for things like pet food production, sometimes for export to other countries. In 2007, there was a change in the laws in this country, and there was a shift to close the equine processing plants. And that is the time when we really didn't process horses in this country any longer. It did occur at that same time where we also had a surplus, kind of a surge of the number of horses in this country, and we saw a decline in the value of many of those, particularly the lower end horses. So it was a little bit of a perfect storm effect as far as a few different factors coming into play. There is discussion ongoing right now as far as the potential to open equine processing plants. So it is entirely possible that in the years to come that we will see equine processing on some level return to the United States.
That wraps it up for this episode of Real Ag. We hope that the information presented here gives you a better understanding of horses. On behalf of the Real Ag crew, I'm Kyle Bauer, helping you sort the truth and helping you understand Real Ag.
Production of Real Ag is made possible in part by an underwriting grant from Kansas Soybean Commission. The Soybean Checkoff. It works for everyone.